A man, cold and ruthless, ties a sick Mustang to a tree deep in the wilderness. Alone, weak, and surrounded by the howls of hungry wolves, the horse closes its eyes, ready to meet its end. But just as the wolves close in, something extraordinary happens. Something that will change everything. Stay with us for a powerful story of survival, courage, and the unexpected bonds that defy all odds. The bitter chill of dusk settled over the Montana wilderness, painting the sprawling forest in shades of gray and amber. The world seemed still, save for the faint rustling of leaves and the occasional howl of wolves echoing from the distant hills. Among the tranquility of nature, a grim scene disrupted the harmony. A Mustang horse, thin and trembling, stood tied to a towering pine tree, its head hanging low in exhaustion. The Mustang, once a proud creature of the wild, now looked like a ghost of its former self. Its ribs jutted out beneath its dull chestnut coat, every breath labored and shallow. A thick rope bit into its neck, tethering it tightly to the tree. The horse's legs quivered, its hooves digging weakly into the cold earth. It could barely stand, yet it was forced to face the cruelty of fate. A man stood nearby, his shadow stretching long in the fading light. John Harper, a rugged rancher in his late 40s, watched the horse with an expression as cold as the wind. His boots crunched against the frosted ground as he adjusted the rope, ensuring it wouldn't give way. "There's no use keeping you," he muttered, his voice devoid of emotion. "You're more trouble than you're worth." The Mustang's large, glassy eyes briefly flicked to John, but there was no fight left in the animal. It was sick, its strength sapped by days of neglect. John had found the horse a week ago on his property, limping and clearly abandoned by its previous owner. At first, he'd thought of nursing it back to health, but with mounting debts and an already struggling ranch, he decided the horse wasn't worth the effort. John stepped back, pulling his coat tighter against the icy wind. The howls of wolves grew louder, closer. He glanced at the horizon, where the sun was sinking fast behind the jagged peaks. "They'll find you soon enough," he said quietly, almost to himself. He turned on his heel and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the forest without a second glance. The Mustang remained motionless, its head drooping as its ears flicked toward the distant howls. Night was falling quickly, and with it came the predators. The wolves, emboldened by hunger, would soon pick up the scent of a helpless animal. The horse shifted slightly, its legs wobbling beneath its weight, and let out a weak, mournful whinny. It wasn't a call for help, there was no one left to hear it. It was a sound of resignation, an acknowledgment of its fate. The first wolf appeared just as darkness blanketed the forest. Its glowing eyes shone like lanterns in the shadows, its sleek body moving silently through the underbrush. A second wolf joined moments later, then a third. They formed a loose circle around the tree, their low growls rumbling like distant thunder. The Mustang flinched, its nostrils flaring as the scent of danger filled the air. One wolf crept closer, its teeth bared in anticipation. It crouched low, ready to lunge, when suddenly, a strange sound echoed through the forest, a high-pitched whistle, sharp and piercing, cutting through the tension like a blade. The wolves froze, their ears swiveling toward the source of the sound. The Mustang, too, raised its head slightly, its ears flicking forward for the first time in hours. The whistle came again, followed by a rustling in the trees. A figure emerged from the shadows, carrying a lantern that cast flickering light across the scene. The wolves snarled but hesitated, their eyes darting between the figure and the horse. The man stepped closer, and as he entered the dim light, his features became clear, a wiry old hermit with a weathered face and sharp, determined eyes. "Get out of here," the man barked, swinging the lantern in a wide arc. The wolves growled but began to retreat, their instincts telling them this new arrival was not to be trifled with. The pack slowly disappeared into the darkness, leaving the Mustang and the man alone beneath the towering pine. The hermit approached the horse cautiously, his eyes narrowing as he took in its condition. "Well, aren't you in a sorry state?" he muttered, pulling a knife from his belt. The Mustang tensed but didn't resist as the man carefully cut the rope binding it to the tree. "Whoever left you here wanted you dead," he said, his voice softening. "But I reckon you've got some fight left in you yet." As the last strand of rope fell away, the Mustang collapsed to the ground, its legs too weak to hold it up. The hermit crouched beside it, placing a hand on its neck. "Easy now," he murmured. "We'll get you out of here." With surprising strength for his wiry frame, the hermit fashioned a makeshift sled from fallen branches and hauled the Mustang onto it. The horse didn't protest, its body limp with exhaustion. The hermit hitched the sled to his mule, and together, they began the slow trek back to his secluded cabin deep in the forest. The Mustang's eyes fluttered shut as the rhythm of the mule's hooves lulled it into a restless sleep. For the first time in days, the horse wasn't staring death in the face. And though its journey was far from over, it had found something it hadn't expected in the heart of the wilderness: hope. The dawn broke over the forest, spilling golden light through the dense canopy of trees. The hermit's cabin sat in a small clearing, its rough wooden walls blending almost seamlessly with the natural surroundings. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, a sign of life in this isolated sanctuary. Inside, the Mustang lay sprawled on a bed of hay in a corner of the cabin, its shallow breaths the only sound in the stillness. The old hermit, whose name was Eli, moved quietly around the room. His wiry frame and weathered hands betrayed a life spent in solitude, carving out an existence in the unforgiving wilderness. He glanced over at the Mustang, his sharp eyes studying the animal's every twitch and movement. "You're a tough one," he muttered, stirring a pot of herbs and water over the fire. "Most wouldn't have made it through the night." Eli had seen his fair share of cruelty in his years, but finding the Mustang tied and abandoned had stirred something in him. He couldn't fathom what kind of man would leave a creature to die like that. As he worked, memories of his younger days surfaced, days when he'd lived in the world beyond the forest, where greed and neglect often overshadowed compassion. He shook the thoughts away and focused on the task at hand. The horse stirred, its ears flicking at the faint crackle of the fire. Eli approached slowly, holding a steaming bowl of the herbal mixture. "This will help," he said softly, kneeling beside the animal. The Mustang tensed but didn't resist as Eli gently dripped the warm liquid into its mouth using a wooden spoon. The horse's nostrils flared, and its eyes opened slightly, meeting Eli's for the first time. In that brief moment, something passed between them, an unspoken understanding that neither of them was ready to give up. Over the next few days, Eli devoted himself to nursing the Mustang back to health. He named the horse Ember, a nod to the faint spark of life that still burned within its weakened body. Every morning, Eli would gather medicinal herbs and forage for anything that could help restore Ember's strength. He cleaned the animal's wounds with care, his hands steady despite the horse's occasional protests. Ember began to show signs of improvement. Its coat, once dull and matted, started to regain a faint sheen. The horse's breathing became steadier, and its eyes grew brighter with each passing day. Eli noticed the change and allowed himself a small smile. "You've got fight in you after all," he said one evening, sitting on a stool beside Ember. "More than most folks I've known." Despite the progress, Eli knew they weren't out of danger yet. The wolves that had circled the Mustang before hadn't gone far. At night, their howls echoed through the trees, a chilling reminder of the ever-present threat. Eli kept a rifle by the door and